Matt and Sharon and Paul and I, we were all part of this theater company at the University of Iowa. And I recall all of us had our own individual problems with the way that company was run. And I think that's what led Matt originally to have the idea of separating from that group. That, and he graduated. He wasn't a student anymore. And the rest of us, Paul hadn't been a student for a while. And Sharon was close to graduating or already had. I had a year and a half left about when we started. And so it didn't seem right for us to keep working in this student group anymore because none of us were really students or going to be students much longer. And Matt had this vision. I mean, this was all Matt. He might tell you otherwise, but it was all at the beginning. It was his vision, and it was. I remember the story goes something along the lines of, "Oh, I want to start this theater company, and I want to do stuff that nobody else does. I want it to be unique and different, and I want to maybe I want to move to Chicago and do it there, or maybe we'll do it in Iowa City. I don't know, but it's going to be years down the line." And the conversation goes, Paul says to him, "Well, why wait? Why not do it right now?" And that kind of started the whole train rolling, that conversation. And, Matt and Sharon had been friends of mine for probably about 4 years. They were some of the first people I met when I moved to Iowa City and for my freshman year. And I had met Paul through the student group, and he was basically my best friend at the time. And he and I eventually started dating as well. So it was Matt and Sharon and Paul and Ali. And it was just a lot of fun back then. I mean, don't get me wrong, it was a lot of work too, but just being around people with ideas, people with this vision of what they want was just so inspiring. I was never an idea person. I was always the person who grabbed onto somebody else's idea and said, I know how to make that happen. And so that's basically, Matt and Paul were the idea people, and Sharon and I were the people who made it happen. I mean, Sharon was working a full-time job at the time. So, I mean, obviously Matt and Paul were integral to the business side of it as well. But they were the ones who really took it to the next level, took it to this idea of being the theater of exploration and being the theater company that does these unique and interesting things that nobody else is doing. And that was always in the back of our heads at the beginning, but we didn't really know how to make that happen until we were planning our very first fundraiser, which we called Cruise to Murder. It was a murder mystery dinner theater kind of thing, and we really had very little idea what we were getting into. It was the four of us, and we asked all of our friends to help us out, and thankfully they all said yes and did. Our friend Sarah wrote the murder mystery at the time. I played the singer who gets murdered on the cruise ship, which was a lot of fun. Never been murdered before in any shows I've ever done except that one. No, that's not true. That's not true. I did 10 Little Indians, and I was murdered in that. Anyway, it was a good time, but we always felt like, well, I always felt, I can't put words in their mouth. I always felt like, where exactly are we going with this? Where are we going to be 2-3 years down the line? When I'm going to be graduating, probably moving to another city. At that point, I wasn't quite sure where I was going or what I was doing, but it was one of those, we've invested so much time, so much money. I personally went into a couple of $1,000 debt trying to get this going, and I know the others did as well. We never really talked about where it's going to be 10 years down the line, or 15 years, or 20 years. I mean, that didn't even occur to us back then. It was more where are we going to be a year from now? Where are we going to be 2 years from now? And so the fact that Dreamwell is 20 years old now kind of blows my mind, that not only does it still exist, but it still really goes along with this vision that we had 20 years ago of what we wanted it to be. And I think all four of us would say, wow, I'm really surprised. We got so lucky to get people like Jamie Ewing and Matt Brubaker involved really early on in the process. They started getting involved on the board and things like that about the time I was leaving. So unfortunately, I never got to know either of them really well, but I certainly know their names. I've certainly met them both. It was just, it's so amazing to see what it has become. I mean, I think back to sitting around Matt and Sharon's living room, trying to decide where we're going to put these shows on, what shows we're going to do, who's going to direct them, how we're going to hold auditions, all of that process stuff. That when you come into a company that already exists, all of those processes are already in place. But you don't think about the fact, starting from scratch, you have to make those rules. You have to make those bylaws and the processes that are followed. And I'm sure they've changed in 20 years. I have no doubt that they've changed. But it's just one of those things you don't realize exactly how much work it is. But it was just things you don't think about. Like, how are you going to serve dinner to, I think we probably had 40 or 50 people at that event. And it's just things like that. Things like, who's going to do all the dishes after? Well, you know who did all the dishes? The murder victim. That's when when I died basically on, like, right in front of Matt Faldudo. Right. The whole story was my character was the cruise ship singer and I was having an affair with him. So I was poisoned and I died right in front of him. Paul was the ship's captain of the cruise ship. He came out, he threw me over his shoulder, my dead body, and carried me into the kitchen of Old Brick, which was backstage. And soon we had a 2 or 3 people waiting tables, and they started bringing in these dirty dishes after I died. And I'm in the kitchen and I'm looking at this pile of dirty dishes, and I'm dead. I can't leave. Right? There's no door out of this kitchen other than to walk through the main area. So I guess I'll do the dishes. But I mean, when I signed up for starting a theater company, that was not something I expected to be doing. I'm sure, everyone who works on a volunteer theater works backstage as well. I mean, all of the actors, all of the directors, all of the producers, we all do everything. But at that point, we didn't quite realize what everything really meant. None of us had started a business before. Matt and Sharon, at least, they were out. They had pretty good business jobs, so they had at least an understanding of how businesses worked. Paul worked at Barnes & Noble. I was a student. I was working at the university doing website development. And none of us really had a concept of how to start a business, much less how to keep one running. I remember very clearly Matt and Paul and I going to the lawyer's office to sign the Articles of Incorporation. And that was the moment to me where it became real. Sharon was working. She couldn't be there that day to do it. So it was just 3 of us. And I couldn't even tell you where the guy's office was, but I could tell you what it looked like, because I felt like that was the first thing where I really felt like, oh my gosh, I'm an adult. I'm signing something that has this importance and meaning. And like I said, we weren't thinking 20 years in advance. We had no idea that this would essentially become part of our legacy. that we were signing this piece of paper, and now, 20 years later, we're talking about it because it still exists. I mean, I really am surprised some days. I saw that picture of, I don't remember who posted it, but somebody posted this picture on Facebook during the election of Hillary Clinton standing at a counter at a restaurant in Mount Vernon, I think, and there was a sign for the Dreamwell show between her and whoever's hand she was shaking, and I'm just like, I can't even believe that's there. It totally blew my mind. I'm like, not only does Dreamwell still exist in the future, but here's this person who is being elected president, we thought at the time. Every time Dreamwell does a show, I still look at, every time the season comes out, I go and I look on the website and see what the season is going to be. I follow the Facebook page. I'm even a member of the Corridor Theater group on Facebook, just to see what's going on and see what's going. The fact that people are talking about it still is amazing, and talking about it with respect. Like, wow, okay, Dreamwell has existed for 20 years. Maybe we should look to them to see what we should do. Some of these newer companies coming along and looking to us as, okay, those people did something right. Like, we sure didn't know it. We really didn't have any idea what we were doing when I look back on it. If I were to do something like that now, it would be different. But I'm still so proud that, 420-somethings came along and were able to make something that people today still look at and still go to the shows. And it's not only that, but it still aligns with everything we ever talked about. It's just, I'm so grateful for everyone who came after me, who came along and believed in the vision and kept it going, and everyone who's going to come in the future, especially after Matt leaves. What is that going to look like? The fact that there are the Matt Brubakers who have stepped in and can further that vision, because he very clearly understands what we wanted originally. So I'm just so happy about it. Basically, Matt named it, and he told us why he named it that. And he said to us, I don't really care what you guys think. This is what we're going to be called. You know how Matt can be. But the good news is, once he explained to us what the name meant and where he got it from, we were all like, yeah, definitely, it's gotta be Dreamwell. There's no other choice. So the story goes, and you might get back to Matt with this because I'm sure he tells it better than I do. He had a friend, a very, very close friend, one of his best friends, Paycheck. His name is Jim, but everyone calls him Paycheck. It's a variant of his Slavic last name. I don't know. Anyway, Paycheck has this thing that he would do every time he says goodbye to somebody. And he would say, dream well. As in, I hope you have great dreams every night when you go to sleep. But it was bigger than that, and it meant more than that to him when he said it. And if you hear this guy say those words to you, dream well, he says it with such sincerity that even if you don't know him well, you know that he actually cares about you and wants you to dream well. And he really hopes that your dreams come true. I was building the website because I was a web developer. That's what I did 20 years ago. Back in 1997, the web was still up and coming, and it was still, if you wanted to have an edge, that's what you did, is you built a website. So I built this website, and I bought Dreamwell.com. And I still to this day own that. I've renewed it for something like 50 years in the future. I have no idea what happens to it if something happens to me, but I imagine it becomes part of my estate. But so I said, I want to own that name. I want to own Dreamwell.com because it speaks so much about who I am as a person. Because I have this thank you card hanging up on my bulletin board still from Sharon after I moved to Colorado. It says, "We wish you the best of luck in Colorado, and thank you so much for having the foresight to buy Dreamwell.com." All of us, all four of us, I think that was ultimately what we had always said we wanted to do is, we want to move to Chicago and do theater. And Matt did for a while. But then, once we started Dreamwell and Matt and Sharon decided to start a family, it was pretty clear that Iowa City and Coralville area was the place that they were going to be long term. I can't remember if it was Of Mice and Men or if it was Baby in the Bathwater. It must have been Baby with the Bathwater because I feel like I was performing. Or maybe it was actually Intellectual Orgasms. It was one of those shows the first season that the content may have been a little on the edge compared to, that was what we wanted to do. We want to push the envelope on things. So we picked these shows that had content that was maybe a little different than what people were used to. But I remember one of those shows we had people walk out during, and I do feel like it was Baby with the Bathwater. It was very clear that the comedy was not for them. And afterwards, we all just laughed about it because it was almost surreal because it was exactly what we had wanted to happen. This idea of we're going to do something so different and a kind of comedy that is not what people are expecting. They're going to come to this show, and what we wanted was a reaction, and boy, did we get it. Well, I do have a very interesting perspective because I was there at the beginning and I walked away. And it was so hard to leave. It was hard to leave Iowa City. It was hard to leave the university. It was hard to leave my friends. It's really hard to leave Matt and Sharon and Paul. They were my people. And, but I knew that in order to move on and become the person I wanted to be, I had to go live somewhere else and do something completely different. But it was my perspective comes from having walked away and having seen it grow into what it is now. And just remembering how much fun it was and how hard it was at the same time. And I've never had any other experience like Dreamwell in my life. In these last 20 years, I've been involved with other theater companies. I've been on boards. I've done websites. I've done all of the things that I officially did for Dreamwell except be a founder. And being a founder is what makes Dreamwell the most important organization I've worked with to me. Happy birthday, Dreamwell.